also get that Donald Trump told us exactly what the hell he was going to do. And that not only did the vast majority of the American people still saw him closer to normalcy than we saw the Democratic Party. But because of that, regardless of his ways, Donald Trump is actually trusted more than y'all. He didn't hint towards misogyny for black men that could possibly vote against Kamala Harris. He didn't do that. He wasn't somebody that was scared to do interviews half the time and was at the mercy of people connected to her campaign instead of recognizing she was the Democratic nominee and she was supposed to be running the show and she was supposed to be the boss. You told us so? Yeah, you did. What you didn't do was tell us enough about you and what you would ultimately stand for. That's why he's the president. That's why the GOP is in control of the House and the Senate. And the Democrats on the outside looking in.
I feel like I make a video about the Democrats like every other week at this point. Every other day. Not every other week, every other day. I saw from the intro, Kamala Harris came out recently. She's talking about how she told us so. Oh, I told you this was going to happen. I'm like, you didn't tell us nothing. All you did was give the most memorable thing about Kamala Harris is corporate jargon, her laugh, and you better think, brother. I don't know, the fake accent. That's the thing I remember from Kamala Harris. I can't remember none of her policies. I think something about throwing money at the wall and see what sticks with affordable housing. It wasn't going to make housing affordable, but I digress. And this is a problem the Democratic Party has. As you saw from Stephen A. Stephen A. mentioned it perfectly. He summarized it perfectly. That's why he's the intro of the video. You spent so much time talking about Trump that we didn't know a goddamn thing about you. I wouldn't do anything differently than Joe Biden. Then you got all these people surrounding the campaign, making books, making quick cash over the drama and the fact that Biden was mentally unfit. Kamala Harris was panicking throughout her entire campaign. It's so funny. And then the funny part is, I'm not privy to all this data and insights, and I can't follow politics every day because I work a job. But me just casually looking at politics, I saw where things were going. I was like, oh yeah, this girl, her campaign is a pending time bomb. I called it a month before Kamala Harris really tanked her campaign. I called it. I was like, yo, her campaign is pending. How I was able to make that prediction? All I did was look at what she did 2020 and looked if she changed anything. She didn't change nothing. She operated the same way, the same model from 2020. And I said, you failed the election. You failed to be a primary candidate. And you're literally doing the exact same thing you're doing as the current nominee of the Democratic Party. Yeah, it's waiting to collapse. And I remember I got a lot of downvotes on that video. But look at me now. Democrats out here, on the other hand, Democrats post-election, we need to find a way to connect with the everyday working class Americans. Democrats a couple months later, this is what kicking the ish out of fascism looks like. You want to see this? Sorry, excuse for a rally. Not sorry, excuse for a rally. Sorry. You want to see this Democratic rally? You think this is helping the Democratic Party? Let me know in the comment section if you think this will help the Democratic Party.
This is what kicking the shit out of fascism looks like. This is what it looks like. We've seen a lot of people cave to fascism in America. We're not.
You hear how, like, the messaging here is everything's fascist because we don't like it, right? And here, I'm playing one more clip. Right? The Democrats already openly admitted that if they ever gain power again, they'll jail their political opposition, subpoena and investigations on day one. Like, America, don't waste your time with this party. Please, don't waste your time on this party. They just want power to do what they want to do. Don't waste your time on this party. Republicans Congress, you're officially on notice. We need you all to start acting less like Mitch McConnell. All right, let's see. And more like Mike Lee. Right? Oh, sorry.
And I'll tell you this, Elon Musk was on the news the other day saying, well, if the Democrats win, it's just going to be subpoenas and investigations. It's the one thing he's right about. You're damn right there's going to be subpoenas.
What's in it for you, America? That's why I'm gonna ask. That's why I'm gonna leave that little clip there. What's in it for you? What's in it for you? Do you benefit from the open? Just like only people who just hate Trump will vote for that. But if you want something actually done in your economy, right? I just did a video about tariffs, breaking down the tariffs, and explaining that hey, the media they're looking at it. They're looking at the wrong priorities. Trump's goal currently isn't to create short-term success for the stock market. He's not trying to fudge numbers like Joe Biden did in his last 4 years on his job. Trump's not trying to fudge his job numbers. He's trying to objectively get, okay, what's the reality of the stock market? And we're finding the reality of the stock market. It was supplied, it was subsidized by government money. And Trump's like, all right, I'm taking you off of that. And now, like an addict, the stock market is reacting badly. But hey, short-term pain for long-term gain. And Trump's just trying to tell you, hey, let's look at it from a long term. Democrats are mad that Trump is not fixing their mess fast enough. Make it make sense. And they want us to vote for y'all? No. America, please, do not fall for it. Just wait and see. Don't panic. Let's wait and see. Let's give Trump. If Biden ruined the economy, it took him 2 years to do it. He had 4 years to figure it out. Give Trump the benefit of doubt, at least for a year. Let's see where he goes with this. And he's already getting some results. But the Democrats want you to vote for them so they can subpoena their political opposition. How does that benefit you, America? I'm going to leave it off right there. I want to play this clip because Bill Maher is starting to realize, yeah, Trump got it, man. Trump's one of the most effective politicians he's seen because Trump isn't trying to BS you. And I think that's one of the reasons why many people trust Donald Trump more than they trust the Democratic Party. Let's take a look.
Trump really interesting is one of the most effective politicians, whatever you think of the policy and him as a person, just as a politician, just understanding that always lean in to being more who you are. The people are not savvy about issues, but they smell a phony a mile away. And that kind of shit, nobody else does it. You know, there's a couple of times when, look, I've been his biggest critic for good reason. And when he got reelected, I said, I'm not going to pre-hate anything. And then the first week I said, well, there's lots of things I hate because I do. Okay, there's some things I don't hate also, but the way he can do that and sometimes kind of make me go, oh man, I got to give it up. Like when he did that thing where the guy came in from the Taliban and he said, this is an aerial picture of your house. If during our withdrawal, one American is hurt, just know I know where you live. I was like, oh, can we just play the music now? Because I don't care. It's Donald Trump and he's the worst person ever, blah, blah, blah. I fucking love that. One time they were doing something was going on with, and he said, you know what? When you come after New York, you got to go through me. It's like, oh, hometown boy. You know, he has those moments that no other politician has. And the Democrats have to find that guy.
You know what's funny is I don't fucking care what you think about Trump. I don't. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter you call him a 34-time felon or an insurrectionist or a bad businessman or misogynistic or racist. Or he cheated on his wife. None of these things matter. It didn't resonate. But the problem is you're still talking about it and you hate this man so much because you believed all the gullible bullshit that they told you that you keep doubling down because you can't imagine that you were wrong, that now all of a sudden you no longer stand for things that you used to stand for. You bought into Russia collusion. He didn't pay his taxes. Quid pro quo. Very fine people. Bloodbath. The list goes on and on and on and on. Now all of a sudden, securing our borders and getting rid of violent offenders is a bad thing. no longer good for Americans or American people. You now think that getting rid of waste and corruption and mismanagement and misspending of money in the government, which you have screamed for decades, is no longer a good thing because Trump's doing it and using Doge, which was something started under Obama, just renamed. You no longer think it's a good thing to end the war between Russia and Ukraine or Israel and Palestine. You think the war should go on and peace is a bad thing because Donald Trump is the one bringing it to you. You are no longer objective because you're so filled with hate. You've adopted extremist ideologies and beliefs. You think violent damage and destruction of property is the proper way to protest. You think calling for the unaliving of a president of the United States is somehow now socially acceptable. You think going after and attacking people with different viewpoints or cutting them out of your lives is somehow socially acceptable today. You guys have lost your ever fucking mind, and you think I fucking care what you think? Because I don't.
And now to the finale. I want to show a clip of Tim Walz, the failed vice president of Kamala Harris, and their blitz of them trying to go to red states in town hall tour. And he gets confronted by Jake Tapper about some of the priorities of the Democratic Party, right? Because Democratic Party, they don't want to admit that they're wrong. You saw from my part one kind of segment, you heard Bill Maher's comments about how effective Donald Trump is as a politician. Then I showed you a follow-up of some an average American just on social media telling you what he thinks. And that's the kind of outcomes that Trump gets. This is why Trump won the popular vote. But Democrats do not want to admit that they're wrong about themselves, right? Kind of a self-centered way of doing it, but hey, that's a Democrat for you. They don't want to admit that they're wrong as politicians, that they're wrong on the messaging, that they're preaching the wrong things, that the American people rejected them. No. They just say, no, somehow the American people are being deceived by Trump. That's why they love to throw this. Trump is a liar. Oh, you're a smart person. I know you don't really believe Trump's lies. What Trump is lying about? Can't tell you. And what they call a lie is merely a difference of opinion, a difference of approach. And I'm like, that's like me saying Android's the best phone on the market. And you think it's Apple. And you call me a liar. Oh, you're a liar. There's no way you can believe that Android is better than Apple. Yes, it does. I do. It doesn't pigeonhole me to only use Apple stuff. I can use other stuff with my Android. It's more cost effective to have Android. Not me trying to make a debate about Android, but you get what I'm saying. There's things that I prioritize differently that justify my choice of getting an Android phone versus an Apple phone. I don't like overpriced earphones just because of the status, just because of brand name. You get where I'm going with this. And it's the same thing with politics. And I don't understand why people can't see that politics is just as much about trade-offs and priorities as your other purchasing decisions. Why you buy a Honda over an Audi? There's different factors that comes in when you make your vote. But Democrats don't want to acknowledge that and try to present themselves as the better option. All they do is demonize Trump because they got nothing. But I digress.
The issues you identified there were immigration, DEI, and woke. You think Democrats' problem was that you just didn't do a good enough job explaining the policies and not that voters simply didn't just reject what you were selling, particularly on immigration, I wonder?
No, on immigration, what we were asking for is a bipartisan policy that strengthens immigration control, that recognizes that we need a workforce here, that they should be allowed here legally, and that when they get here, they're part of the American fabric. And that is the bipartisan bill we had. Donald Trump snatching up college grad students and sending them back or sending folks to El Salvador illegally, that's not the policy. But for us to say, we don't care that violent criminals come in, we most certainly do. What we were asking for is the resources to make sure they don't get here. And the same thing with the other...
Yeah, y'all always need resources, but when you, like... This is one of the problems I think why Americans rejected Democrats is that you always want resources, but then you don't do nothing with it. We gave you $42 billion to make rural internet. Y'all didn't do it. We give you billions of dollars to make charging stations around the world, around the country. You couldn't do it. You didn't complete it. You got money for high-speed rail during the Obama era. Y'all didn't do it. Y'all always need resources for something, and it never bring about a tangible result. This is the mentality. This is the branding of the Democratic Party. I want this much money for affordable housing. Guess what the outcome is likely going to be? No affordable housing. Blue State, Gavin Newsom, one of your front runners for 2028. He spent $24 billion over 5 years to end homelessness. That was the tangible result that he promised if you allowed him to spend $24 billion of California taxpayer money. What was the result of homelessness? Homelessness increased. Democrats, you do not have a good track record of managing and using resources for a justifiable end result. And that's why Donald Trump won. You guys said we're going to build back better over the last 4 years. Was the economy built back better? No, it wasn't. And that's why you lost. And they don't want to admit their own failings. And how can you resolve a problem in your party if you're not willing to acknowledge the problems in your party? This is nothing more than political smoke show, trying to absolve themselves of accountability.
Their policies. It's not a woke policy to provide food for children to get breakfast and lunch, and we get better outcomes from that. They defined things on their terms that weren't true. And what I'm saying is, are we going to turn away from being a country of legal immigration? Are we going to turn away from a country that thinks diversity and making sure that we don't have gaps in income between blacks and whites?
You can't promise that. You can't promise that. And this is my problem. Democrats, you can't promise that. That's outside the power of the government. They can't promise that. That's like me promising, hey, there shouldn't be no gaps in white people making it into the NBA. You can't promise that. The white person actually has to be good at basketball to make it to the NBA. It just so happens 78% of the NBA is black. That's meritocracy. There's a trade-off there. You can't promise that. The government can't promise that. That's outside the power of the government. But this is the kind of Ponzi scheme that the Democrat run. They make claims that the government can do something for you when it's not in the power of the government to even do that. That's how you cause discrimination in the first place. This is why DEI doesn't work. You're forcing us, you're trying to force a group of people who don't have the people to do the outcomes. Like, black people are 30% of the population in the United States of America. There's certain job fields that realistically, they only have 5% of the black population that's actually qualified to do those jobs. So what you're doing is you have to lower standards. It's a fact. There's certain bachelor's degrees that not a single black person has it ever. I think somewhere in aerospace engineering, I said that as an example. I have to refresh my memory on the degrees that don't have a single black graduate in it. And you want DEI quotas for that? You have to lower the standards. And that's a problem that the government can't address. You have to start in elementary school. By the time they get to college, hell, by the time a black kid, most of the black community gets to high school, it's already too late to intervene. All you're doing is forcing outcomes. And forcing these outcomes will create bad results. Like, you want to take the medical, you want to take out the bar exam. Why? Because black people are disproportionately failing. That's a result that should highlight to you, oh, the black community is not properly prepared at a large scale to compete in law, for the law school stuff. Just like, hey, white people, you're not adequately, you don't have the adequate abilities to perform, to get into the NBA at a high percentage. Skill. Everyone recognizes that, oh, white people need to focus on their basketball skills. Okay, black people need to focus on academics. Now black people are reckoning with the fact that a lot of black men are illiterate out here. And then think about it. Education-wise, the black community does not have a solid foundation academically to compete with other groups of people like the Asians and white people, but you want to blame racism. Not the fact that your parents don't teach you how to read at an early age. That's not a priority for them. Priority for most of these people are survival. Majority of black kids are raised by single moms, but somehow it's black men's fault. This is stuff that Democrats can't really fix. They can incentivize solutions, but at the end of the day, it's not in their power to actually create these outcomes. And this is just another way for them to scheme people, trick people to giving them power over their lives. For what? For nothing.
Those are policies that have strengthened America. And I think what we allowed ourselves to do is we got timid. And then when we got power, we didn't pass things that improved people's lives. This whole idea, I think the Democratic Party gets theoretical, talk about food insecurity. People are hungry, get them food. People don't have a house. Make sure they have a living wage. That's the point that I'm saying is, Fox News will glorify, oh, he's for DEI. Not your definition of DEI. My definition is rule of law that's fair, that everybody gets an opportunity. And that's the point.
But that's not DEI. There's Asian students right now suing Ivy League universities for discrimination based on their race. Because if you only went on the merits, Asians would have beat out the average black applicant in the college system. But the college system wanted to make room for 13% of the 13% of their admissions to be black. When if you just competed on the merits, that number would be lower than 13%. I think after DEI was banned in the college system, the admissions went down sharply for black applicants because that was the reality. The reality is, hey, you wasn't good enough to be in these Ivy League schools. We just lowered the standard for you so you can get into the Ivy League school. The same way that if a lot of white kids were getting drafted into the NBA, a lot of people will make the same complaints. These white kids are not as good as this black kid that you left out. This kid's undrafted, but you let this white kid into the NBA. It would have been the same comparison. That's the same thing that was happening in academia. But he thinks that's not discrimination. This is what I'm telling you. These people, like, perception is really their reality. But they don't look at the results. Oh, we didn't pass policies that gave good outcomes. That's the truest statement he ever said. Because every policy you see that the Democrats put forth, if you observe it over a long-term perspective, it didn't do what it was supposed to do. Actually, it made even in some cases things worse. Same argument I make about Department of Education. Oh, we invested money, trillions of dollars into our teachers. What was the results for that? Our education system is last place. So money isn't the issue. Something else is the issue. Let's dismantle it. But you crying here. Okay. This is why Democrats lose. They're not about nothing. They just want power. They just want to manage problems. They don't want to manage solutions. They want to create solutions. They want to manage problems. And they don't want to look at, and they're going to claim that the voters are the problem. No, voters saw through y'all. Y'all ain't about nothing. Y'all about your own political power and interest. That's it. And y'all protect illegals because you don't want to acknowledge the fact that you benefit from illegals being in the country, from increasing your electoral seats because of population numbers. They fudge up your population numbers. You use them to justify more government spending. Oh, we need to help these people. You tell Americans that it's bad to have kids, and then when we have a birthing shortage, you say, oh, illegals are the solution. We shouldn't kick out people just because they broke our laws to come into this country. This is the excuses the Democratic Party is making.
Point I think we have to make. Now, look, I'll be the first to tell you, Jake, I'm out here doing what I can do. I don't know if I'm the best spokesperson to do it after just losing an election, but what I know is the public, and you saw it across the country this weekend, they're rising up and asking their leadership to do something.
Yeah, there you go. Do something. You know, typical Democratic fear mongering out here. Do something. They always want to do something, but they don't want to do something effective. They don't want to do something that actually does something. Like it's actually a solution to the problems that the American people are putting forth. American people is complaining about illegal immigration. What did Tim Walz and them say? Oh, it's not a problem. Oh, it's not a problem. Oh, we're the party for the working class. Okay, what's working class about you? Oh, we want a higher minimum wage. Higher minimum wage is just regulation where it protects these major corporations. It stops small businesses from competing with major corporations. That's what minimum wage that's the outcomes that it truly creates. It doesn't help working class people. It makes working class people lose their jobs, work less hours. Ask California how that played out. They don't want to look at the results. All they care about is the attentions. And I think this segment here calls out the class kind of divide that's going on in our politics, and how the working class is starting to realize, yo, the GOP is actually the better option, not these Democrats who give us lip service.
This is a class thing. It really is. Donald Trump, mirabile dictu, I can't believe he did it. As a classical Republican. He's not classical Republican. But what Donald Trump did was he said, this Republican is going to side on this Republican is going to choose the side of the working man. It's not going to choose Wall Street. Wall Street hates Donald Trump. Have you ever seen anybody in this audience that's watching or listening? Has anybody ever in their wildest imagination think that Democrats would be on the floor of the Congress blasting Donald Trump and worried that Wall Street's going to be hurt, and not talking one word about the working classes that are all for this, because they think finally somebody's listening? And the final thing is, has it had any effects? Donald Trump says $4 trillion in foreign investment. The figures I've seen are commitments. They're not actualizations yet, but $3.1 trillion If that comes in 3.1 trillion, there'll be millions of jobs that come in here for people to avoid these tariffs. Because he's just saying, if you come in the United States and you want to help us, you can keep the profits. You just have to have the jobs here. If you're Mercedes-Benz and you...
Hey, think about that. Think about that. That's an alternative view of how we're going to fix the problems in America. Instead of artificially raising the value of every job in the United States, I want to create more opportunities for people to choose. Okay, this job doesn't meet my income kind of goals. This job does. Okay, I'm gonna go for that one. Increase the opportunity, not force the opportunities to match people's expectation. That's unrealistic. And I think this is the Democratic Party has painted themselves in the corner of a party that's unrealistic. The party of control freaks, the party of the intolerant. Oh, I don't like Elon Musk, therefore you can't like Elon Musk. Well, I like Elon Musk for this and this reason. Vandalize my car. Make it make sense. I like Apple. I like Android for this reason. No, you should have Apple. Breaks my phone. Everyone's going to look at you crazy. But the Democrats, they can't see themselves in a mirror. It seems like the Democrats have a lack of an ability, at least the politicians does, have a lack of an ability of looking at themselves objectively. But, keep it up. It only helps Trump in the end. Because Trump literally breaks these people's brains. It's ridiculous. It's so funny how the emotionalism, the emotional messaging is backfiring kind of on the Democratic Party because they tell themselves sweet nothings. Oh, it wasn't our fault. The voters were racist, sexist. That's why Kamala Harris didn't win. And they're not looking at the substantive stuff that could actually make them a better party in the long run because they don't want to take the short-term pain of confronting their inadequacies, their lack of messaging, and the lack of results that they've been given over the last 4 years. Like, make it make sense. You did nothing in the 4 years. You made Americans' lives worse in the 4 years. Didn't want to confront that fact. Didn't want to acknowledge that fact. And you think the American people wanted to trust you with more power? Democrats, you are a delusional party. But hey, keep it up. You're only helping the Republicans in the long term. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts and your perspective on this matter. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Please share this video if it feels unclear. It really does help me out in the algorithm. And I'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace.